Welcome to the Heart's Haven. Let the story begin. A poor girl saves a millionaire's son. His reaction leaves everyone speechless. The street was never supposed to feel this loud. It was just another late afternoon in downtown Chicago, traffic humming, crosswalk signals blinking, people moving with purpose, eyes fixed on somewhere else. No one noticed the moment things shifted. Not at first. A small sneaker stepped off the curb too soon. Ethan Carter, Jr., 8 years old, dressed in a pressed navy coat that cost more than most monthly rents, had let go of his nanny's hand for just a second. Just long enough to chase after a paper airplane skimming across the wind. It glided into the street. So did he. A horn sounded sharp, sudden, slicing through the noise of the city. Everything slowed. The crowd froze, but not in time. Except for one person. From the edge of the sidewalk, a blur of motion broke the stillness. A girl, thin, small, wrapped in a worn grey hoodie, moved before anyone could think. Lily Brooks didn't hesitate. She didn't look around. She didn't calculate risk or consequence. She just ran. Her shoes slapped against the pavement as she reached him, grabbing his arm with a force no one expected from someone so small. The paper airplane tumbled away, forgotten, as she pulled him back toward the curb just as a car swept past, close enough to stir the air around them. Then silence. Not the absence of sound, but the kind that falls when everyone realizes something almost happened. Ethan stood there, frozen, wide-eyed. His breath caught somewhere between fear and confusion. Lily let go slowly, as if unsure whether she was allowed to still be holding on to him. People began to gather. Phones came out. Voices overlapped. "Did you see that? Where did she come from? Is he okay?" But no one asked her. Lily stepped back, her shoulders curling inward, like she was trying to disappear into the noise she had just broken. Her hoodie sleeve was frayed at the edges, her fingers trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the cold that never quite left her bones. Ethan looked at her, not like people usually did. Not through her. At her. You saved me," he said quietly, the words unfamiliar in his mouth. She blinked, unsure how to respond. "I just didn't want you to get hurt," she murmured. Simple, honest, enough. In the distance, a black town car screeched to a stop. Doors opened fast. Voices sharper now, controlled, urgent. Ethan. The name cut through everything. And in that moment, as the world rushed back in security, panic, polished shoes hitting pavement, no one yet realized what had truly just happened. Because a little girl the world barely saw had just changed everything. The city did not slow down. It never did. Sirens did not follow. No alarms rang. Within seconds, the rhythm of Chicago stitched itself back together as if nothing had happened. Cars moved. Signals changed. People resumed walking, already folding the moment into something they would tell later or forget entirely. But not everyone moved on. The black town car idled at the curb, its engine humming low and controlled, like everything associated with it. A tall man stepped out, his presence cutting through the air more sharply than the earlier horn. William Carter. His coat was charcoal, tailored, untouched by the wind. His shoes met the pavement with precision, each step measured, practiced. He did not rush often. He did not need to. But now, he did. Ethan. He did not raise his voice. He did not have to. It carried anyway. Ethan turned immediately, the sound of his father's voice grounding him more than anything else. "Dad!" William's eyes moved fast, scanning his son from head to toe. No visible injury, no blood, no damage, only fear, still clinging to the edges of the boy's expression. A pause. A breath. Relief, controlled and silent. Then his gaze shifted to her. Lily stood a few feet away, half hidden behind the edge of the crowd, as if she had already decided she did not belong in the center of what she had just saved. Her hands were tucked into the sleeves of her hoodie, her posture small, contained, invisible again. William studied her the way he studied everything unfamiliar, not emotionally, not yet, carefully. "This is the girl," the nanny said quickly, her voice still shaking. She pulled him back. "I could not get there in time." William did not respond right away. He looked at Lily again. Really looked. Her shoes were worn thin at the soles. Her jeans carried the quiet marks of too many days outside. Her hoodie was not meant for this kind of weather, not for this kind of city, not for this kind of life. And yet, she had moved when no one else did. "What is your name?" he asked. His tone was not cold, but it was not warm either. It was the voice of a man who had spent years speaking in boardrooms, where emotions were liabilities. Lily hesitated, not because she did not know the answer, because she was not used to being asked. "Lily," she said softly, "Lily Brooks." The name lingered for a moment, longer than expected. William nodded once, absorbing it like a detail in a report, but something about it did not file away as easily as it should have. Ethan stepped closer to her. "She saved me," he said again, more firmly this time, as if making sure the truth did not get lost in the space between adults. William's jaw tightened slightly. Not in anger, in recognition. He reached into his coat, pulling out a pair of leather gloves, then paused. For a second, it looked like he was about to hand them to her, a simple gesture, logical, appropriate. But he stopped, because something about this moment refused to be transactional. "Where are your parents?" he asked instead. Lily's eyes dropped, just briefly. "They are not here," she answered. It was not dramatic, it was not explained, it was simply final. The wind moved between them, colder now. For the first time in a long time, William Carter did not immediately know what to do next. And that unsettled him more than anything else. For a moment, no one moved. The wind slipped between buildings, carrying the faint scent of rain and asphalt, brushing past them like a quiet reminder that the world was still turning. But in that small circle on the sidewalk, something had shifted. William Carter straightened slightly, his posture returning to its usual control, but his eyes remained on Lily. She had not moved. Most children would have by now. They would have looked for praise, for reassurance, for something in return, but she simply stood there as if waiting for permission to leave. As if staying too long might cause trouble. "Do you have somewhere to go?" William asked. It was a simple question, but it landed heavier than he expected. Lily hesitated again, her fingers tightening inside the sleeves of her hoodie. She glanced briefly down the street, then back at the ground. "I am fine," she said. The answer came too quickly, too practiced. William noticed. He always noticed. Ethan looked between them, confusion softening into something closer to concern. "She should not just go," he said, his voice quieter now, but steady. "It is cold." William exhaled slowly, the sound barely audible. He turned his head slightly toward the driver, who was already watching, waiting for direction. "Bring the car closer," William said. The vehicle eased forward, smooth and silent, stopping just a few feet away. The door opened automatically, revealing warmth inside. Soft leather, controlled temperature. A world completely separate from the sidewalk. William looked back at Lily. "You should come with us," he said. It was not phrased as an order, but it was not quite an invitation either. Lily blinked, surprised. Her eyes flickered toward the car, then back to him. For a second, something like hesitation passed across her face. Not fear exactly, something more familiar. Uncertainty. "I do not think I can," she said. William's brow tightened slightly. "Why not?" She shifted her weight, her worn shoes scraping softly against the pavement. I have things to do." Ethan stepped closer again, his voice more urgent now. "You helped me. You have to come, at least for a little while." Lily looked at him, really looked, and something in her expression softened. Not because of the car, not because of William, because of him. "I cannot stay long," she said quietly. William studied her for another second, then gave a small nod. It was enough. "Get in," he said. This time it sounded more certain. The driver stepped aside, holding the door open. Warm air spilled out into the cold afternoon, brushing against Lily's face. She hesitated at the threshold, her hand hovering slightly, as if crossing into that space required more than just a step. Then, slowly, she climbed inside. Ethan followed immediately, sitting beside her without hesitation. William paused outside for a brief moment. He glanced once more at the sidewalk. The same place, the same city, but it did not feel quite as distant as it had an hour ago. Then he stepped in as well. The door closed with a soft, final sound. Inside, the world shifted. The noise faded, the cold disappeared, everything became quiet, contained. Lily sat carefully on the edge of the seat, her hands folded in her lap, as if afraid to touch anything she did not understand. The fabric of her hoodie looked even thinner against the polished interior. Ethan leaned toward her slightly. "Are you hungry?" he asked. She shook her head out of instinct, then paused. A small silence followed. "Maybe a little," she admitted. William watched that exchange without interrupting. Something about it lingered. Honesty, hesitation, need. Things he had spent years learning to manage, now sitting quietly in the back seat of his car. "Take us to the nearest cafe," William said finally. The driver nodded. The car pulled away from the curb, merging back into traffic. And for the first time in a very long time, William Carter was not thinking about meetings, numbers, or control. He was thinking about a girl who said she was fine, when everything about her said she was not. The cafe sat on the corner like a quiet pause in the middle of the city. Warm light spilled through wide glass windows, soft and golden against the grey afternoon. Inside, the air carried the scent of fresh coffee, baked bread, and something sweeter lingering just beneath it all. The car came to a smooth stop. For a second, no one moved. Then the driver stepped out, opening the door. The noise of the street returned in a gentle rush, but it felt distant now, muted by what had already begun to change. William stepped out first, adjusting his coat automatically. Ethan followed, then turned, waiting without being asked. Lily hesitated again. The cafe looked different. Too clean, too bright, too full of things that were not meant for her. She held onto the edge of the seat for just a moment longer than necessary, then slowly stepped out. The cold touched her again, but it did not last. "Come," William said. This time his voice was quieter, not commanding, guiding. They walked inside together. The door closed behind them with a soft chime. Everything shifted. The warmth wrapped around Lily immediately, settling into her shoulders, her hands, her breath. For a moment, she stood still just inside the entrance, as if her body needed time to understand it was allowed to feel this. A barista glanced up, offering a polite smile. No one stared. No one questioned. But Lily still felt it. The difference, William noticed. He always noticed. "Table for 3, he said simply. They were seated near the window. Outside, the city kept moving. Inside, everything slowed. Menus were placed in front of them, but Lily did not touch hers. Ethan did. You can get anything, he said, leaning toward her with quiet excitement. They have hot chocolate here. It is really good. Lily looked at the menu like it was written in a language she had not learned yet. Too many choices. Too many things that did not belong in her world. I am okay, she said softly. William set his menu down. You said you might be hungry, he replied. There was no pressure in his voice. Just acknowledgement. Lily nodded slightly. A waitress approached, her tone warm and routine. Orders were placed. William spoke with clarity. Ethan added a few things with quiet enthusiasm. Lily hesitated. Just something small, she said. The waitress smiled gently. How about a grilled cheese and some hot chocolate? Lily nodded. That sounds good. When the waitress left, silence settled over the table. Not uncomfortable. Just unfamiliar. Ethan swung his feet lightly under the chair, glancing at Lily every few seconds, as if making sure she was still there. William leaned back slightly, his eyes resting on her again. Now that they were closer, details became clearer. The faint redness in her hands from the cold, the careful way she held herself, the way she looked at everything like it might disappear if she reached for it too quickly. You acted quickly back there, William said. Lily looked up, surprised. I just saw him, she replied, and he did not see the street. Ethan gave a small, embarrassed smile. William nodded once. You did not think about it? She shook her head. No. There was no pride in her voice. No expectation of recognition. Just truth. William looked down briefly at the table, then back at her. Most people would have hesitated, he said. Lily shrugged slightly. Then it would have been too late. The words were simple, but they landed heavily. Ethan grew quiet. William did not respond right away. Because, for the first time in a long time, someone had just said something he could not measure, calculate, or negotiate. Something that simply was, and it stayed with him. Long after the words had passed, the food arrived quietly. Plates were set down with care, the soft clink of ceramic against wood barely louder than the low hum of conversation around them. Steam curled gently into the air, carrying warmth that felt almost unfamiliar to Lily. She looked at the grilled cheese in front of her. Golden, crisp, perfectly cut. Beside it, a mug of hot chocolate sat untouched, a thin swirl of steam rising like something alive. For a moment, she did not reach for either. Ethan noticed. It is not too hot, he said gently. You can try it. Lily nodded, her fingers wrapping slowly around the mug. The warmth seeped into her skin, and she held it there for a second longer than needed, as if her hands were trying to remember what comfort felt like. Then she took a small sip. Her shoulders softened, just a little. William watched without interrupting. There was something in that moment he could not ignore. Not the food, not the setting, but the way she experienced it, like it mattered, like it was rare. Do you come around this area often? He asked. Lily set the mug down carefully. Sometimes, she said. Another short answer, but not closed. William leaned forward slightly. Where do you stay? He asked. The question hung in the space between them. Lily's eyes dropped again, but this time she did not answer right away. She reached for the sandwich, breaking off a small piece instead of taking a full bite. I move, she said after a moment. Ethan frowned slightly. Move where? Lily gave a small shrug. Where it is quiet, she replied, where people do not ask too many questions. William felt something tighten in his chest. Not sharply, but steadily. And school? He asked. Lily hesitated again. I used to go, she said. Used to. The words settled heavier than they sounded. Ethan stopped moving completely now, his attention fixed on her. "Why did you stop?" he asked. Lily looked at him. Her expression did not change much, but something behind it did. "I had to help my mom," she said. William's gaze sharpened slightly. "Where is she now?" Lily's fingers stilled against the edge of the plate. "She is sick," she answered softly. No details, no explanation, but enough. Silence followed. Not empty, just full. William leaned back slowly, his mind already moving, connecting pieces, building a picture he had not expected to see today. A girl who moved from place to place, a mother who could not take care of herself, a child who still stopped to save someone else. He looked at Lily again. Really looked. "You said you could not stay long," he said. She nodded. "I have to go back before it gets dark." William glanced at the window. The light outside had already begun to fade, the sky shifting toward evening. Then he looked back at her. "For your mother," he said carefully, "you are bringing something back." Lily reached down beside her chair and pulled up a small, worn paper bag. She placed it gently on the table, almost protectively. "Dinner," she said. Inside, wrapped carefully in napkins, were a few pieces of bread. Nothing more. Ethan stared at it. William did not speak, because in that moment, something far deeper than gratitude began to take shape. Not obligation, not charity, something else. Something he had not felt in a very long time. And it did not come from what she had done. It came from who she was. William did not reach for the bag. He did not need to. He could see everything inside it from where he sat. A few slices of bread, carefully wrapped, folded with intention, protected as if it mattered more than anything else on that table. And to her, it did. Lily's hand rested lightly on top of it, almost instinctively, like she was making sure it would not be taken away. Ethan looked between the bag and the untouched food still on the table. "You can take more," he said softly. "There is still a lot." Lily shook her head quickly. "This is enough," she replied. Enough. William repeated the words silently in his mind. He had spent years in rooms where nothing was ever enough. Bigger deals, larger numbers, more growth, more control. And here sat a child who believed that a small paper bag was enough. "Does your mother eat?" William asked carefully. Lily nodded. "Not much," she said, "but she tries." The way she said it was not complaint. It was loyalty. William leaned forward slightly, resting his forearms on the table. "What does she need?" he asked. The question was simple, but it was different now. Not distant, not formal. Lily looked at him, her eyes searching his face as if trying to understand the intention behind the words. "She just needs to feel better," she said. There was no mention of doctors, no mention of money. Just better. Ethan shifted in his seat, his voice smaller now. "Maybe we can help her." Lily's gaze moved to him. For a moment, something fragile passed across her expression. Hope. But it disappeared just as quickly. "It is okay," she said. "We are fine." William felt it again. That word. Fine. It did not mean what it sounded like. "I do not think you are," he said quietly. The words were not harsh. They were certain. Lily did not argue. She just lowered her eyes again, her fingers tightening slightly around the edge of the bag. "I have to go soon," she added. Outside, the light had dimmed further. Street lights flickered on, casting a soft glow across the glass. Time was moving. William glanced at the window, then back at her. "How far is it?" he asked. Lily hesitated. Not far, she said. Ethan leaned forward. We can take you. The car is right outside. Lily shook her head again, a little more firmly this time. I usually walk. William studied her. You should not have to, he said. Silence followed. Then, slowly, Lily looked up again. People say that, she replied, but it does not change anything. The words were quiet, but they landed harder than anything else she had said. William sat back slightly. For the first time in a long time, he felt something unfamiliar pressing against the edges of his thoughts. Not a problem to solve. Not a deal to structure. Something human. He reached into his coat again. This time, he did not hesitate. He took out the gloves and placed them gently on the table in front of her. They will help with the cold, he said. Lily looked at them, then at him. I cannot take those, she said. William met her gaze. You already gave something today, he replied. This is not payment. A pause. It is respect. The word settled between them. Lily looked back down at the gloves. Slowly, carefully, she reached out and touched them, not taking them yet, just feeling them. And in that small, quiet moment, something began to shift. Not loudly, not all at once, but enough for the story to start moving in a different direction. Lily did not take the gloves right away. Her fingers rested lightly on the soft leather, tracing the edge as if she was memorizing the feeling before deciding whether she was allowed to keep it. The cafe lights reflected faintly off the surface, warm against the fading daylight outside. I cannot, she said again, quieter this time. But her hand did not move away. William noticed. He did not push. Across the table, Ethan leaned forward, his voice gentle but certain. You should. It is cold out there, and you said you walk. Lily looked at him. There was no pressure in his words, no expectation, just concern. Real concern. It made the decision harder. I do not want to owe anything, she said. The sentence was small, but it carried weight far beyond her years. William's expression shifted slightly. Not surprise. Recognition. Then do not, he replied. Lily blinked. You do not owe me anything, he continued. Not for this, not for what happened earlier. A pause. You made a choice, he said. So am I. The words settled slowly. Different from what she was used to hearing. Different from how the world usually worked. Lily looked down at the gloves again. Then, carefully, she picked them up. Not quickly, not greedily, but with care. Thank you, she said. Ethan smiled. William did not. But something in his posture softened. Outside, the sky had deepened into early evening. Streetlights reflected across the window, stretching long lines of light across the glass. Time was no longer something they could ignore. Lily slipped the gloves into the pocket of her hoodie, then reached for her small paper bag again, checking it instinctively. Still there. Still enough. I should go now, she said. Ethan's smile faded. So soon? He asked. She nodded. It gets colder later. William stood. The movement was quiet, but final. We will take you, he said. Lily shook her head immediately. I told you I walk. That was before, William replied. She looked up at him. And this is now. Silence stretched between them. The kind that was not about words, but about something deeper, trying to decide which direction to take. I am used to it, Lily said. William held her gaze. You should not have to be. The same sentence. But this time, it did not sound like a distant observation. It sounded like a decision. Lily hesitated. Her fingers tightened slightly around the paper bag. "I do not want people to see," she said. The words came out softer than before, more honest. Ethan tilted his head. "See what?" She did not answer. She did not need to. William understood. The car, the clothes, the difference. "I will have the driver wait a block away," he said. Lily looked at him again, searching, measuring. "Just to make sure you get there safely," he added. No pressure, no condition, just presence, the kind she was not used to. Slowly, she nodded. "Okay," she said. Ethan let out a small breath, relieved. They stepped outside together. The cold had settled in deeper now, wrapping around the city in a quiet, steady way. Lily slipped her hands into the gloves almost without thinking. They fit. Not perfectly, but enough. William noticed that too. The car waited down the street, just as promised. Not obvious, not overwhelming, just there, waiting. And as they began to walk toward it, something invisible but undeniable moved with them. Not obligation, not charity, something closer to responsibility. And none of them could quite name it yet. The car followed at a distance. Not too close, not too far. Just enough for its headlights to trace a quiet path behind them, stretching soft light across the sidewalk as they walked. The city had shifted into evening now. Storefronts glowed, traffic thickened, conversations blended into a steady hum. But Lily walked as if none of it touched her. Her steps were careful, measured, familiar with every crack in the pavement. She did not look back often. Only once, briefly, just to make sure they were still there. They were. Ethan walked beside her, quieter now, his earlier excitement replaced with something deeper. He watched the way she held the paper bag close to her side, the way her hands stayed tucked into the gloves, even as she walked. "Do you always walk this far?" he asked. Lily nodded. "It is not so bad," she said. But her voice carried a softness that said otherwise. William walked a step behind them, his pace steady, his eyes moving between Lily and the street ahead. He had never walked this part of the city like this before. Not without purpose, not without distance. Now, every detail felt sharper. A flickering streetlight, a closed storefront with a handwritten sign, a bus stop with no one waiting. Places he had passed 100 times without ever seeing. "Here," Lily said suddenly. She slowed, then stopped near a narrow building tucked between two older structures. Its paint was worn, the front light dim. A small set of steps led up to a door that looked like it had not been replaced in years. She turned toward them. "This is where I go." Ethan looked up at the building, then back at her. "You live here?" he asked. Lily hesitated. "For now," she said. William stepped closer, his gaze lifting toward the second-floor window. A faint light glowed behind thin curtains. It flickered slightly, like it was fighting to stay on. "That is your mother?" he asked. Lily nodded. "She rests a lot," she said. "I try not to wake her." The paper bag shifted slightly in her hands. "Dinner?" "Enough." William looked at the door, then back at her. "May I come up?" he asked. The question was simple, but it changed everything. Lily froze. Not out of fear, out of uncertainty. No one had ever asked that before. Ethan looked at her too, waiting, not pushing, just hoping. Lily glanced at the door, then at the dim light above, then back at William. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Okay," she whispered. William gave a small, almost invisible nod in return. The driver stayed by the car. The street stayed the same. But as they stepped toward the building together, something unseen began to unfold. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet door, about to open into a truth none of them were ready for. The stairwell was narrow. Each step creaked softly beneath their feet, the sound echoing in the quiet space like something fragile. The walls were worn, the paint chipped in places where time had passed too many times without being noticed. Lily moved ahead of them, careful, familiar. She knew exactly which steps made noise, which ones to avoid, her small feet guiding her upward with a quiet rhythm she had learned over time. Ethan followed closely, slower now, his hand brushing lightly against the railing. William came last, his presence steady, his eyes taking in everything without saying a word. At the top of the stairs, Lily stopped. A single door stood in front of them. Faded, scratched, still standing. She adjusted the paper bag in her hands, then reached into her pocket with the other, pulling out a small key. For a second, she paused, her fingers resting on the handle, as if preparing herself. Then she opened it. The room inside was small. One light in the corner cast a soft, uneven glow. A couch, worn but clean. A small table near the window. A blanket folded carefully over the back of a chair. And on the far side of the room, near the wall, a figure rested. Lily stepped in first. "I am back," she said gently. Her voice changed. Softer, warmer. The kind of voice people use when they care deeply. She walked over, setting the paper bag down beside the small table, then kneeling slightly. "I brought dinner," she added. There was a quiet movement. A woman stirred, her eyes opening slowly, adjusting to the light. She looked tired, but not broken, just worn. "Lily," she whispered. A small smile followed. "Enough." William stood near the doorway, not stepping in right away. He watched. The way Lily leaned in slightly, the way her hand rested gently near her mother's arm, the way everything in that room, though small, held meaning. Ethan stood beside him, unusually quiet. "This is my mum," Lily said, turning slightly toward them. Her voice carried something different now. Not hesitation, pride. William stepped forward slowly. "Good evening," he said. The woman looked at him, confusion flickering across her face, then settling into something softer as she glanced back at Lily. "She helped my son today," William continued. The words were simple, but they carried weight. The woman's eyes returned to Lily, searching, then softening even more. "I am not surprised," she said quietly. Lily lowered her gaze slightly, not embarrassed, just unused to being seen that way. William looked around the room once more, then back at them. He reached into his coat, not for money, not for something quick or easy, but for something else entirely. His phone. "I would like to help," he said. No hesitation this time. No conditions. The room fell still. Lily looked at him. Her mother did too. "What kind of help?" she asked gently. William met her gaze. "The kind that lasts," he replied. A pause. Then, softer. "If you will allow it." Silence filled the space again. But this time, it felt different. Not heavy. Not uncertain. Just open. Lily looked at her mother. Her mother looked back. And in that quiet exchange, something unspoken passed between them. A question. A possibility. A door, slowly opening. Outside, the city lights continued to glow. Inside, something far more important had already begun. Because sometimes the smallest hands do not just save a life. They remind someone else how to live again.